The plate was still full when I cleared the table. That was the third night in a row. She always asked for roasted squash. Said it reminded her of October in Vermont, though we'd never been. I made it anyway. I seasoned it like she used to, but she barely touched it now. And every time, I told myself maybe she just wasn't hungry. Maybe it was a long day. But the truth is, squash doesn't lie. And neither does the fork she never picks up anymore. She came home late again tonight. No explanation. Just a hum under her breath, some upbeat tune I didn't recognize. She walked past me to the bedroom, pulling her earrings off like the evening had been perfect. I asked if she'd be joining me for dinner. She didn't stop walking. Not now, she said, her voice flat. Not tired. Not upset. Just finished. She's been saying that a lot lately. Not now. Later. Maybe. I don't know. I'll see. I know what people will say, that I should have asked questions. That I should have stood in the doorway and demanded answers. But I'm not built for confrontation. I'm built for waiting. For overthinking. For whispering apologies I never needed to give. So instead of speaking, I collected the plates. Washed them by hand. Dried them with the towel we got as a wedding gift and never replaced. I didn't eat. I never do when she doesn't. She fell asleep with her phone face down. It buzzed at 1:23 a.m. I stared at it for 20 minutes without touching it. I didn't want to know, but my chest did. My stomach already knew. The screen lit up again. Different name. Different heart emoji. Different scent of guilt in the air. When she turned in her sleep, she smiled. I hadn't seen her smile like that in weeks. And it wasn't for me. I spent the rest of the night in the living room, curled up on the end of the couch like I didn't belong in my own bed. I didn't cry. I just watched the window. At 4:47 a.m., I whispered the word I never thought I'd say. Farewell. She didn't hear it, but I did. And so did the silence. And in a few hours, when she asks if I've seen her green scarf, I'll say yes. I'll even hand it to her. And I'll smile. Because tomorrow, she'll find my side of the closet empty. But not yet. There's something I need to see first. Something I need to confirm. Because if I'm right, and God help me, I think I am, she hasn't just betrayed me. She's been planning it. She left the house that morning humming again. Same tune as last night. Only this time it was louder, like she wanted me to hear it. She didn't say goodbye. Just grabbed her scarf, checked her reflection in the microwave door, and left. Not a glance back. The door clicked shut with the same cold precision I'd been feeling for months now. That's the thing about certain kinds of distance. You don't hear it coming, but one day you wake up and realize you haven't been seen in weeks. I didn't go to work. I sat on the edge of the couch with the TV off, my coffee untouched, and the echo of her keys still swinging in the lock. My job's flexible. Clock repair doesn't exactly come with deadlines. But something else had snapped in me. Not anger. I don't get angry. I get still. My hands get colder. My thoughts get sharper. So I did something I've never done. I followed her. Not immediately. I waited exactly 14 minutes. I didn't want it to look suspicious. I told myself I wasn't invading her privacy. I was confirming what I already knew deep down. There's a difference, right? Or maybe I'm just good at lying to myself. I left the house wearing the jacket she hates, the one with the missing button. I didn't care. Let me be invisible. It's what I'd already become in her eyes. She parked at the office lot downtown, but she didn't go inside. She waited in the car, texting. After 5 minutes, a man got in on the passenger's side. I couldn't see his face. All I saw was the way she turned to him. Her posture changed. She laughed, head tilted, eyes wide, like she used to with me. But this laugh didn't belong to our kitchen, or to the weekends we used to spend wrapped in cheap blankets watching reruns. It was newer, polished, the kind of laugh that comes with secrets. I stayed 3 cars back when they drove out of the lot. My heart was punching my ribs. I thought I might throw up. Not from what I saw, but from what I expected to see next. And I wasn't wrong. They didn't go to a restaurant, or a store, or a park. They drove to a small 2-story house in the suburbs I'd never seen before. He unlocked the front door. She walked in ahead of him, like she'd done it before, like she knew the smell inside. I sat there with my engine off, just breathing. 20 minutes passed. 30. I didn't move. I didn't cry. My eyes didn't even blink. I just stared at the house with its ivy-covered fence and wind chimes on the porch. I started counting the chimes. 12 of them. I counted them again. Still 12. And then the front door opened. A dog ran out. Not hers. Not ours. She hated dogs. Always said they shed too much. But she knelt down and hugged that dog like it was hers. Like she'd done it 100 times. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. This was home. She had another life. A place she smiled. A dog she cuddled. A man she met in broad daylight. No fear. No shame. Just a different version of her. One that didn't flinch at lying to me for months, maybe longer. I didn't follow her home that evening. I left first. I went back to our house and looked around at everything I once thought was ours. And suddenly it all felt like theater props. The books we never read. The travel brochures we collected but never used. The ceramic mug that said, "Together is better." I threw it away. Quietly. Without drama. When she came home, I was sitting on the couch, the TV still off. She didn't ask why. She walked past me, unbothered, humming again. That same tune. I finally recognized it. It was a love song. Not one we ever danced to. I didn't say a word. But inside, I was already gone. The next morning, I stood in front of our closet for over an hour. Not looking for clothes. Not getting ready. Just staring. You'd be amazed how loud silence can get when it's filled with questions you're too afraid to say out loud. I wasn't angry. That would have made it easier. I was humiliated. But quietly, like someone whose name was mispronounced in a room full of people who didn't bother to ask how to say it right. That kind of ache, the one that makes you feel like a ghost in your own home. I reached for one of her sweaters. Not to wear, obviously. I just wanted to check something. I lifted the sleeve and inhaled. Vanilla. Not the kind she wears. She hasn't used that body spray in years. And under the vanilla? A different scent. One I didn't recognize, masculine, expensive, clean. It hit me in waves, like someone else had been there, pressed against her skin long enough to leave a piece of himself behind. I don't know why, but I checked 3 more sweaters. Same result. She was wearing someone else's afterglow. I went to the laundry hamper next, digging through it like a maniac. I found one blouse I hadn't seen in a while, tucked deep under old towels, like it was hiding. There was a faint smudge on the collar. Lipstick. Not hers. Unless she suddenly started kissing herself on the neck. I sat on the bathroom floor for the next 2 hours. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just kept repeating the same thought in my head over and over. She's rehearsed this. Everything. The not now. The long showers. The fake yawns. The soft hums of love songs meant for someone else. It wasn't spontaneous. It was polished. Worn in. Lived in. She hadn't cheated. She'd migrated. That day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I texted her, "Hey, let me know if you want me to bring anything home for dinner." She replied 3 hours later, "All good. Don't wait up. Late again." And that was all I needed. I waited until dusk. I took her key off my ring and made a copy. Then I went through every drawer in the house, methodically, quietly, like I was dismantling a crime scene. She kept everything too neat. That's how I found the envelope, tucked behind old birthday cards in the back of the desk we never used. It was thin, yellowed at the edges, addressed to a name I'd never seen before. Inside were receipts, dozens of them. Hotels. One particular place, again and again. Same room number circled more than once. Same initials signed on check-ins. Not hers. His. They'd been celebrating their affair like anniversaries. Some receipts were handwritten notes, folded into quarters, notes she kept. No dates. No full names. Just phrases like, "Wish I could fall asleep beside you every night. Counting the days until you're mine. You smelled like heaven last time." I couldn't stop shaking. Not because of what I read, but because I wasn't surprised. That terrified me the most, that I'd been so hollowed out over time, her betrayal didn't even shock me anymore. I took the envelope, resealed it, and placed it back exactly where it was. No trace. No anger. No confrontation. She walked in that night wearing a new scarf. Not hers. Too fancy. Not a gift from me. When she walked past me, she paused for a second. I thought maybe she'd noticed something in my face, guilt, rage, knowing. But she just smirked and said, "You should get out more. You look like you're rusting in place." I smiled back and said, "Maybe I'll try that." And in that moment, I decided. I wouldn't confront her. I'd vanish first, but not in the way she expected, and definitely not in silence. 2 nights later, I cooked dinner I never planned to serve. Lemon chicken with rosemary. Her favorite. The kind she once claimed made her feel safe. I timed everything perfectly, even folded the napkins like she liked, that little triangle crease I could never get quite right. This time I did. Because this time wasn't about making her happy. This time was about watching. She was due home by 8. I'd already set the table by 7. The wine was open, her glass half filled, not full, because she always said full glasses made her nervous. I remembered that. Funny how I still cared enough to get the details right, even after everything. She walked in at 8:23, hair damp, smile lopsided, keys tossed in the bowl like she hadn't just spent the last 2 hours tasting someone else's life. She didn't even pretend to be surprised by the dinner setup. She glanced at the table, then at me, and said, "You shouldn't have." That was it. No curiosity. No warmth. Just a comment as hollow as her promises. "I didn't," I replied. "I made it for someone who used to live here." She blinked, not in guilt, not in panic, but in annoyance, as if I'd interrupted a thought more important than my presence. Then she walked past the table, into the bedroom, closed the door, and stayed there for the rest of the night. I didn't eat. Again. I waited until midnight, then quietly packed the meal into containers and slid them into the fridge next to all the other things she never touched anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I opened her laptop. Yes, I know how it sounds. I'd never done it before. Never even considered it. But something in me snapped, not loudly, not violently, just enough to let logic win over loyalty. Her password was her birthday. Of course it was. Easy. Obvious. Just like her routines had become. The desktop background was a photo of a lake I'd never seen. A place we never visited. There were no folders named suspiciously. Nothing cartoonishly hidden. Just a folder called Notes, sitting next to Budget 2024. Inside Notes were 4 documents. The first was a packing list. Not for a vacation, for a relocation. Clothes, chargers, toiletries, dog stuff. Dog stuff? We don't have a dog. He does. The second was titled, Joint Accounts. A list of our banks, usernames, passwords, what she had access to, and what she'd need to transfer later. One line read, "Don't forget to move the auto deposit from Elliot's repair shop before Friday." I stared at my name like I didn't recognize it. Like I wasn't a person but a placeholder in a spreadsheet she planned to close. The third document was worse. It was called Convo with M Draft. It was a goodbye letter. To me. But written to him. "Dear M, I know I have to tell him soon. I know he deserves more than this, but I don't have the energy to deal with his emotions. He won't scream. He won't fight. He'll probably just stare, and I can't bear the silence. I need this clean. Quick. You and I deserve to move forward without dragging him behind us. No names. No dates. Just plans." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. What scared me most was how calm I felt. Like I'd already lived this moment in dreams I forced myself to forget. I opened the 4th file. It was a poem. Not by her. By him. Something about her laugh being weatherless, whatever that means. I closed the laptop. She didn't know I knew. Not yet. And I decided, in that moment, that I wouldn't stop her. I'd let her write the ending. But I'd write the last line. The next evening, I watched her through a pane of glass, the same way people watch strangers at the zoo, not judging, just observing something no longer familiar. She was sitting in the passenger seat of a car I didn't recognize, in the parking lot of some wine bar we used to pass on the way to my mom's house. She never wanted to go in there back then. Said it was pretentious. I guess pretentious gets an upgrade when someone else is paying the tab. I parked on the far end of the lot, engine off, body low behind the steering wheel. She looked, weightless, like someone who just finished shedding her past and was glowing with relief. Her body angled toward the man driving. He was smiling, animated. She reached over, touched his wrist. He didn't pull away. Neither did she. They laughed at something, both of them. And that laugh, God, that laugh, it cracked something open in me I didn't know was still whole. She had smiled at me like that once. Probably years ago, but my memory makes it feel recent. Like a ghost of something warm. She leaned over and kissed him. Not quickly. Not nervously. This wasn't an affair. It wasn't a slip. It was a ritual. When she no longer tried to hide. When she pulled back, she looked out the window. And that's when she saw me. I froze. Our eyes met, just for a second. I thought maybe she'd panic. Maybe she'd leap out of the car. Maybe she'd mouth, "I'm sorry," or wave me away. But she waved. Not a frantic wave. Not a pleading one. A small, polite, meaningless wave. The kind you give to a passing neighbor you haven't seen in a while. It was worse than an insult. It was indifference. I didn't wave back. I drove home in silence. She didn't return that night. I didn't expect her to. I didn't text. I didn't call. I sat in the kitchen, in the dark, and stared at the two chairs across from each other. I took one of them and carried it to the curb. Just one. I didn't want to look at it anymore. I didn't want to wake up tomorrow and pretend there were still two in this house. At 2:06 a.m., I heard the door open. She came in barefoot, heels dangling from her fingers, still humming something soft. She passed the kitchen without stopping. No light on. No pause. I listened as she walked down the hall, her steps light, aimless, like she wasn't returning home, just stopping through. In the morning, she was gone again. No note. Just the faint trace of perfume I hadn't smelled in years. I opened her drawer and found the keys were gone. Her spare set, the ones I never touched. She'd taken them. I checked the closet. Half her clothes were missing. Not all. Just enough to let me know she wasn't leaving. She was transitioning. I opened the fridge. The containers from our untouched dinner were still there. I threw them away. Not out of spite. Just finality. I wanted space. Cold, wide, humming space. Something that no longer felt shaped around her. Then I checked my email. One unread message. Subject line, statement notice. It was a withdrawal alert from our joint account. She had moved exactly $2,000. Not all of it. Just a dent. A careful, surgical one. A test to see if I'd notice. Or care. I stared at the number for a long time. Not because of what it meant, but because I knew she thought I was too weak to confront it. She was right. But weakness has its own kind of power. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that doesn't show up with ultimatums or accusations. The kind that watches. And then writes. I opened a blank document and began typing everything. Every moment. Every cent. Every lie. I didn't know what I was building yet. A goodbye letter? A confession? A log for a lawyer? I just knew this. When she finally decided to tell me the truth, I'd already be miles ahead. And when I whispered farewell, it wouldn't be a plea. It would be the last thing she never got to answer. She left her phone unlocked. Just once. I think that was her mistake, or maybe her quiet dare. I had gotten up early that morning, not to cook or clean or fix anything, but simply because I couldn't lie still anymore. I was sitting at the far end of the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee when I heard the buzz. 3 short vibrations on the counter. I glanced at it. Her screen lit up with a name saved as MS, no heart emoji. No nickname. Just initials. Neat. Clinical. As if the label mattered more than the truth behind it. And then, just as I looked away, it rang. Not a text. A call. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because a second later, her voice filled the air. She'd accidentally picked up on her Apple Watch left charging nearby. She wasn't in the house. She was outside on the back porch, pacing barefoot with a cigarette she only smoked when she thought I was asleep. The call came through the speaker, quiet but clear enough. She laughed softly and said, "He still doesn't know. I don't even think he's capable of knowing." The man, MS, chuckled. "You'll tell him eventually. Or not. What can he really do?" Silence. Then her voice, low, firm, ugly in its calmness. "Honestly, I don't care anymore. I think he knows. But he won't say anything. He just lingers." He laughed again and said, "That's not a man. That's an empty coat." And she laughed too. Not a little nervous giggle. A full laugh. The kind people give when they've already buried the past and feel no grief for it. I stared at her phone on the table, glowing like a lit candle over a grave. The call ended 2 minutes later. She came inside through the patio door and didn't notice me. Or maybe she did and didn't care. She walked past me, lit a candle in the bathroom, lavender, and closed the door. That's when I realized she was gone. Not leaving. Already gone. Her body still moved through this house. Her voice still echoed through it, but she was no longer in it. Not with me. I waited for her to leave for work, and then I went into her side of the closet again. This time, I wasn't looking for perfume. I was looking for her plans. Hidden among scarves was a small, zippered pouch, the travel kind. Inside were 3 documents: a passport, her social security card, and a new checking account statement. Different bank. No joint access. The balance? $12,700. I remember that number because it was almost the same amount I'd deposited into our shared account over the past 4 months. She was funneling our money, one careful withdrawal at a time. And she was nearly done. I sat on the bed and stared at my hands, palms up, as if some answer might be written there. But they were the same hands she used to hold when she was scared. The same hands she once kissed before boarding planes. And now she didn't even glance at them when she brushed past me in the hallway. I didn't touch the pouch. I zipped it closed, placed it exactly where it had been, and left the closet in perfect condition. Then I went into the garage and opened the box I hadn't touched since my dad died. Inside were old letters, a worn blue suitcase, and a spare phone I'd forgotten I even had. That night, I activated it. I didn't know what I was planning, only that I wanted to be ready. Ready for the moment she decided to end it on her terms. Because I wouldn't be sitting on that couch waiting for permission to feel betrayed. Not this time. At 1:15 a.m., I heard the front door creak open. She was late again. Or early, depending on how you measure dishonesty. I watched from the hallway as she kicked off her shoes and paused in the dark. Then she did something unexpected. She cried. Just a single sound. Choked. Barely there. And then silence. She stood like that for minutes, alone in the dark, before disappearing down the hall. I wanted to ask why. Why now? Why after everything? But I didn't. Because some silences are louder than words. And mine was already screaming. On Thursday, she did something strange. She dressed up too early. It was barely 3:30 in the afternoon, and she came down the stairs in a forest green dress I hadn't seen in over a year. I remembered it not because of the color, but because it was the one she wore the night I first told her I loved her. Now, it felt like a costume. She wasn't wearing it for me. She wasn't even aware of me. She floated past the kitchen like someone late for an audition. Her hair was curled. She had a small gold clutch in her hand. I asked, gently, stupidly, "Big meeting?" She didn't even pause. Just called out, "Reservation at 6. Don't wait up." I didn't. She left the door open behind her. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, not in shock, not in grief, but in stillness, like the room was holding its breath with me. For a moment, I thought maybe I should follow her. Maybe I should confront this finally. Catch her mid-lie, mid-kiss, mid-toast. But something stopped me. A voice in my head said, "You already did that. In your mind. Every night." There was nothing left to catch. Nothing left to confront. The damage wasn't new. I just finally slowed down enough to see it clearly. Instead, I went upstairs. I opened her drawer. Not to snoop. I knew where everything was by now. But something caught my eye, a folded paper tucked inside the sleeve of an old jacket. Not a receipt. Not a card. It was handwritten. From him. Saturday. Finally. Just us. Can't wait to see you in it. M. I knew what it was. The dress. The same one she wore today, just 2 days early. She was rehearsing. Their moment. Their getaway. Their new life. But something about that note felt off. Not in tone. In timing. So I did something small. Something stupid. Maybe. I called the restaurant. Not as her husband. Not even with my name. I just asked calmly if there was a reservation under M. The hostess hesitated. Actually, yes. Party of 2. Private booth. 6 o'clock. Then, without me prompting, she added, "He already arrived." He. She was late. I hung up. No anger. No plan. I just sat on the edge of our bed, staring at my shoes. Then I looked over at the closet. One of her suitcases was gone. That wasn't new. But the other, the one with the broken zipper we used only for long trips, was also missing. She had packed for more than dinner. She had packed for departure. I didn't move. I didn't chase. I didn't cry. Instead, I finally printed what I had written. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a confession. It was a summary. A clear, factual document. Dates. Locations. Transfers. Conversations. A printout of her messages to MS. Screenshots from her hidden folder. Copies of every withdrawal she had made from our shared account. All of it neatly formatted and bound in a simple manila folder. I left it on the dining table, beside a single cup of tea I'd made and left untouched. Then I unplugged the Wi-Fi router and slid it into my drawer. Why? Because I wanted her to feel the weight of returning. No distractions. No fast exits. No pre-written excuses. And I turned off my phone. I just waited. At 7:49 p.m., the doorknob turned. Slowly. She stepped in, heels in her hand again, mascara slightly smudged, breathing heavier than usual. She didn't speak. She didn't even glance toward the table. She headed straight to the stairs. But then she saw it. The folder. My cup. And me. Standing quietly at the edge of the kitchen. She stopped mid-step. Frozen. Then finally, she looked at me. Not in confusion. Not in anger. But in pure, startled realization. She opened her mouth to speak, but I beat her to it. I said nothing. I just whispered, Softly, deliberately, the same word that had been growing inside me for weeks. Farewell. And then I turned. Not toward the door. Not toward her. But toward the room I'd quietly been clearing out for the last week. She didn't follow. She didn't speak. Because suddenly, for the first time in our marriage, she had nothing left to say. She didn't chase me. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even after I quietly moved the rest of my things out of the house. No texts. No calls. No apology typed and deleted. Just absence. And honestly, that was the biggest confession she ever gave me. The manila folder? She left it untouched. I returned a few days later with my brother, just to pick up a few remaining boxes, books, a plant, my grandfather's old camera. The folder was still there on the table. I didn't need it anymore, but I took it anyway. Not out of spite. Out of closure. Evidence for no one but myself. I rented a small place 30 minutes outside the city. Nothing fancy, just space to breathe. The kind of place where no one asks questions, and the silence feels earned, not forced. The first few nights were strange. I'd reach for the other side of the bed and find only the cold. But that cold? It was honest. And I could live with that. I started cooking again. For myself. Not in hopes of being noticed. I read books I never finished. I started restoring a grandfather clock that had been gathering dust in my shop for 6 years. I even added back the button on the jacket she hated. Not because I missed her, but because it was mine, and always had been. One morning, about 3 weeks later, I received an email from her. Just one sentence. Did you really know the whole time? I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because some things don't deserve a response. Silence was the one thing she never understood. She always filled every void with sound, attention, validation. But I learned that silence, in the right hands, can be a boundary, a choice, a clean goodbye. Later that day, I walked through a small bookstore and ran into someone from years ago. Her name was Lila. She used to volunteer at the shelter I'd helped restore. We'd lost touch. She asked how I'd been. I smiled and said, starting over. She smiled back, not with pity, but with something closer to recognition. Like she, too, had once stood in a room full of lies and decided to walk toward the door without slamming it. We talked for a long time. About books. About coffee. About silence. She didn't ask what happened. I didn't offer. It wasn't important. What mattered was that, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an observer in my own life. I was in it. Not waiting. Not disappearing. Not whispering farewells in dark rooms. I was present. And in that moment, as the late sunlight hit the shelves behind her, I realized something simple and quietly profound. She said, not now. I said, farewell. But life? Life said, finally.